Let me be clear. UAP are real.
That was a former Pentagon official, Luis Elizondo, in his opening remarks at the House Oversight Committee and Accountability Subcommittee hearing Wednesday. The witnesses spoke about unidentified aerial phenomenon, aka UAPs. Here's more from Elizondo.
Advanced technologies not made by our government or any other government are monitoring sensitive military installations around the globe. Furthermore, the U.S. is in possession of UAP technologies, as are some of our adversaries. I believe we are in the midst of a multi-decade secretive arms race, one funded by misallocated taxpayer dollars and hidden from our elected representatives and oversight bodies.
Frequent guest on this show and founder of the public newsletter and Substack, Michael Schellenberger, testified that Pentagon sources confirmed the existence of an unacknowledged special access program, that program known as Immaculate Constellation. Schellenberger handed Congress a 12-page report on the program, in which he claims there are high-quality images of UAPs and recorded first-hand observations. Here's what Schellenberger said. Take a look.
I think that what the American people need to know is that the U.S. military and intelligence community are sitting on a huge amount of visual and other information, still photos, video photos, other sensor information, and they have for a very long time. And it's not those fuzzy photos and videos that we've been given. There's very clear
high res,
high resolution.
How many visuals, graphics, videos, photos?
I mean, I've been told hundreds, maybe thousands.
There was a lot to the hearing. Here's a bit more. Let's watch.
Briefly, do you believe, just for the record, that the federal government, any part of the federal government, is knowingly concealing evidence about UAPs from the public?
Yes, sir.
100%.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you. I also want to just go down the line. I know many of you have already said this, but I just, for the record again, just briefly, what do you believe UAPs could be or are?
Strong evidence that they are non-human, higher intelligence.
I echo my colleague's comment, sir.
Genuinely do not know.
Don't know, but we must find out.
Joining us now to discuss is Tennessee Congressman Tim Burchett, who has pushed for hearings on UAPs and more disclosure of what the government might know. Congressman, we're so happy to have you join us.
Thank you all for having me.
It's our pleasure. What needs to happen in order for there to be disclosures or the public's ability to process what we're hearing? Because what I feel like at so many of these kinds of hearings, which I think are tremendously beneficial, but what we hear is journalists or whistleblowers describing other people who have access to information that the public still can't get at, and it becomes frustrating. Well, if there's someone who knows something, can we hear from that person and actually see the evidence that they have?
Well, it's very frustrating, and I'm glad we had the hearing yesterday just to show how pathetic the situation is. We have a government spending tens of millions of dollars on something they say doesn't exist, and then when we want to see files of these in pictures, they're heavily redacted, or they tell us they don't exist when another department tells us they do. The only thing that's going to fix this is the man that's going to the White House, Donald J. Trump. We've got to demand from him and our legislators total disclosure. We need transparency. You all are in the media. You know what that means, more so than anybody else. The government, we can't trust this government. It is so deep and so broad that no one really grasps what's going on with this whole thing. So I think if the president comes forth and says we're going to disclose it, and here it is, that will fix it.
And to that point, Congressman, can I just clarify exactly your position on this? Do you think there is evidence there? Well, let me rephrase that. Do you know there's evidence there that is being concealed, or is your request simply for more transparency and you are agnostic as to what will be shown if there is greater transparency?
I'm 100% convinced that there's stuff being concealed. I've seen things that they won't let out. I've talked to people in the know, and they feel retribution, and that's why I filed a bill on whistleblowers on this very same subject. And I hope our Congress and the Senate have the guts to pass the dadgum thing. because that's what we're going to need that, but we're also going to need a president that will trust the American public to discern for themselves.
The lack of transparency from the federal government is so automatic that I fully believe they would, redact and keep secret things that are totally benign and don't need to be secret at all. And then additionally, will, keep secrets for COVID origins and Kennedy files and all that other stuff that, despite clear mandates from Congress, often in bipartisan fashion to disclose what is known, on COVID origins, right? You all passed that bill. President Biden signed it, and all he got was a press release summarizing things we already know. It is so frustrating. Do you have the faith that Donald Trump, during his second term, can start to change this?
I do, because of the people that he's chosen to surround himself with on this go around, and from my discussions with him, I feel like he will be the president of disclosure. I have this group in the UFO community and out in the public, you open records folks, praising the Senate's version, Chuck Schumer's 60-page version. And yesterday, even one of the members was praising it, how it mimicked the Kennedy files, the dissemination of information there. And here we are 60 years, more than 60 years after Kennedy was assassinated, and we know very little more than we knew when it happened. And all the people are dead that are involved with it. Dadgum, we got to get this stuff out, and we've got to get it to the people, because I do not trust this government. It is too broad and too deep.
Can you just give us any more detail or texture, Congressman, as to your discussions with President-elect Trump on this particular matter? What's his stance on it? What does he say to you when you have had those conversations with him?
I think it's an open book with him. He has clearly been left out on information because of the people that were around him before were old, or were just old neocons that hang around and always end up hired in government, and they protect that information. It's about power, it's about greed, it's about corruption, and all those things that run this town we call Washington, D.C. And I think Trump's had enough of it. He knows this time he's not just going to have to take the head people out. He's got to go much deeper than that. And I think when he does that, you will see a lot of this information shake loose, and a lot of people will come forward because they're not afraid of retribution at that point.
And you think it really is retribution that keeps people from going forward? Because we heard from those witnesses at that hearing yesterday, and they all said, or most of them said, that they do think the UAP information or what they've seen points to non-Earth, alien, presumably, constructions, rather than just what I think is somewhat more plausible being military technology from another government. They said they actually think it's originating off of Earth. If somebody had evidence of that, right, I have a hard time believing that would be the biggest news story in human history, and you're afraid of losing your job. Is it more than just fear of losing your job? Do they threaten people's families? Do they kidnap people? It's just such an amazing thing to be able to prove, and to be afraid of the reputational harm. I always wonder what is really going on that stops people.
We had a suspected whistleblower die mysteriously, and over the last year, David Grush was a very weak job of doing it, but they claimed he had mental issues from combat exposure, which to me is pretty common. I'm not sure why they thought that would bring him to his knees, and that was immediately put out after his testimony to discredit him. So I think there is a lot. And you talk to pilots, they won't come forward. I've talked to pilots in confidential settings where they've said, we don't come forward, Tim, because we will be pulled off the flight line. We'll have a psych evaluation, and the debriefing will be more of an interrogation by some men in suits. I call them spooks. They're usually CIA or some other group, NSA or some other group, but that's generally what happens to these people. Airline pilots will tell you that have seen things. They come out years later because they didn't want to announce it then, because again, they possibly lose their job or other things. So yeah, the threat is real, and again, it's not going to end until Trump ends it.
Well, we hope the ground is shifting there so that we can get disclosures about this very, very important subject. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate it.
Thank y'all for having me.